When it comes to serial killers, there haven't been too many who have gotten away with their egregious crimes. But there is one famous offender whose identity still remains a mystery to this day. The Zodiac killer has almost become a household name in the worst way imaginable. Will the FBI ever identify the infamous murderer? Do they already have someone in mind? On December 20th, 1968, 16-year-old Betty Jensen excitedly got ready for a date with 17-year-old David Faraday. She was in a full-on puppy love with David, and just the thought of a date with him sparked many fireworks in her stomach. When he came to pick her up, she couldn't hide the heat in her cheeks as she looked into his eyes. The two parked Betty's mother's car on Lake Herman Road, a well-known lover's lane. They were so enthralled with each other, hanging on to every word, that they almost didn't notice someone had parked next to them, someone with sinister intentions. Fast forward to 11 p.m. Faraday was halfway out of the car with a bullet wound in the head, and Betty Jensen was about 9 yards away, face down, with a bullet in her back. When the police arrived at the horrifying scene, they scrambled to look for connections. Was it a jealous boyfriend? An angry father? They worked the case like they would any other, but they had no idea that the gruesome, twisted game had just begun. 19-year-old Michael McGow and 22-year-old Darlene Farron were sitting in Michael's car at a park, seeking the same seclusion as the previous victims. They were having a serious conversation, devoting all attention to each other. Michael almost didn't notice a police officer pull up behind them. He groaned and rolled his eyes, begrudgingly getting out his ID and preparing to explain why they were in the park after hours. The blinding light of a flashlight shone into his car, and he quickly squinted his eyes to adjust to the brightness. He opened his mouth to say, "Hello, officer," but was cut off by the bang of a gunshot. Michael awoke in the hospital, surrounded by doctors and policemen. He was told that Denise did not survive the vicious attack, and they needed as much information as possible. Michael gave as many details that he could remember about the horrifying event, but because of the flashlight, he could only say it was a male figure, about 5'9". The clang of a phone ringing echoed throughout the Vallejo Police Department. If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway to the public park, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye. The officers didn't know how to handle the call. There was no possible way that this could be the attacker. Or could it? Or was it just someone trying to spark fear? A few weeks later, the San Francisco Chronicle and the Vallejo Times-Herald both received a mysterious letter. "I am the killer of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl last 4th of July." The opener of the letter's jaw dropped as they read, "Here is a cipher," or that is, part of one. The other 2 parts have been mailed to the San Francisco Examiner and the San Francisco Chronicle. The writer demanded that the puzzles be printed on the front of each page of the newspaper. "If you do not do this, I will go on a killer rampage Friday night that will last the whole weekend." The letter closed with a symbol, a circle with a cross through it. This would become the Zodiac symbol, carrying fear for years to come. The prospective news stations had no time to waste. They immediately called the Vallejo police for help. As the officers read, their brows furrowed, as they glossed through information that only they knew, information that hadn't been shared with anyone outside of the station. This had to be him. They found no fingerprints, and no evidence to suggest who the author of the letters could be. With no immediate leads, they had to do what the writer had said. They posted the ciphers on the front page on August 1st, 1969, along with an official statement by the Vallejo police. The police wanted to gain as much evidence as possible. Their statement taunted the author, saying that if he really was the attacker, he would give them even more details about the crimes. The next few days would be a painful waiting game, hoping for another envelope from the mysterious writer. The San Francisco Examiner received a 3-page letter detailing every aspect of the crimes. "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking." They had a name, or an alias for that matter, for the sick man that was writing these letters. The editor of the Examiner read through the pages in horror. "By the way, are the police having a good time with the code?" The letter was sent to the FBI for investigation. They had to figure out the identity of this Zodiac. Again, nothing substantial was gathered from the pages. Hope was beginning to be lost. High school teacher Donald Harden jumped out of his chair and screamed with excitement. He had spent every waking hour he had hunched over his desk, combing through his reference books to find the hidden message of the Zodiac cipher. He ran to wake his wife from her peaceful sleep so they could write out that message together. Awakened by the thrill of finding the answer, his wife watched closely as Donald scribbled out the letters as fast as he could, not even paying attention to what they said. Their hearts dropped into their stomachs. The message detailed how the Zodiac killed for the fun of it, gathering slaves for the afterlife. Not a word about his identity. There were 18 symbols at the end of the message that did not match the code he had found. He hung his head as he realized he had in fact found nothing. He sent the message to the police with a heavy heart. 20-year-old Brian Hartnell and 22-year-old Cecilia Shepard were having a picnic in the park when they were approached by a strange man. The two looked at him with concern as he wore a black hood with a strange symbol. Brian ushered Cecilia behind him for protection. The man was holding a gun, claiming that he had escaped prison and needed their car. They looked at each other. They tried to speak, but words wouldn't come out. He asked Cecilia to tie up Brian so the two could not chase him after he drove away. As Cecilia hesitantly tied up Brian, she hadn't turned around all the way before the man began stabbing her ruthlessly. Her consciousness faded as the attacker turned to Brian. Although both had survived, they were in critical condition. The Vallejo police took on the case even though they had been enthralled with the mystery of the Zodiac. Maybe it would do them some good to step away for a minute. They did their usual routine, asking the victims for information while still remaining sympathetic. The victims told them about a strange, white man, about 5'9", who had attacked them so viciously. Once they heard that their car was likely stolen, they went back to the crime scene to look for clues. To their surprise, the car was still at the park where they had left it. As they got closer to the vehicle, they began to notice some strange scratches in the door. As they squinted their eyes to make out the marks, their hearts beat faster, and they were able to slowly make out the words that were carved into the metal. Vallejo, 12/20/68, 7/4/69, September 27, 69, 6:30, by knife. The message was signed with a symbol that was too well known for comfort. He had attacked again, and he was taunting them in every way he knew how. They had to do something, and they had to do it now. The police barely had enough time to produce a sketch before the Zodiac killer struck again. This time a cab driver by the name of Paul Stein. The San Francisco Chronicle received another letter from the sickening assailant, claiming responsibility for his carnage. Included in the envelope was a piece of Stein's bloody shirt from that night. Law enforcement had yet another Zodiac murder on their hands. They were losing hope. They didn't know how to stop a man they knew almost nothing about. Almost a month later, the Zodiac sent another letter with another piece of Stein's clothing, coupled with another cipher that would go unsolved. Everyone began to realize they were nowhere near the end of this sick, twisted game. There was no relief for the anxiety that the Zodiac was inducing. Officers grew weary. They were being defeated by the Zodiac. The insanity of this case would continue on for years, full of letters describing his unthinkable plans and additional ciphers that proved more difficult to solve. Each letter became more and more unhinged. He stopped taking responsibilities for the attacks. The Zodiac was using the Examiner as his outlet for his psychotic ramblings. They didn't know what to do anymore. The police had all but given up. It wasn't until July 8th, 1974, that the Chronicle would receive their final letter, with his alleged score being 37. The police department and the FBI worked tirelessly through the years to find the identity of the Zodiac killer. Although there were many suspects, there was not enough evidence to go after anyone. A depressed, sullen defeat was cast over the FBI and the Vallejo Police Department as they closed the case, the Zodiac remaining a ghost in the night forever. Although efforts are still being made, there's still no real answer to the question, who is the Zodiac killer? Volunteer groups have pressured the FBI to rerun DNA evidence with new technology, but those requests have remained unanswered. Do you think the identity of the Zodiac will ever be discovered? Let me know in the comments. As always, if you want to see more videos just like this one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. Until next time.